It was a chill November evening when our story began. England in the early 60s, when Brits everywhere could enjoy the humble pleasures of listening to the Beatles, watching the latest James Bond movie, and leaving your front door unlocked. Ah yes, all great pastimes, but of all of these there's one that still persists to this day: watching TV. Gone were the days of families getting together to listen to radio stories. No, instead they were now watching moving images in a box until their eyes burned away. And that's where we find ourselves, dear viewer, on that dark and cold November night, where families across the country were getting ready to watch a few programs before bed, when suddenly they were greeted by a noise that was altogether foreign to them. And these sounds were not alone. Their TV screens were filled with weird images that they couldn't describe. As the British people of 1963 sat in awe and confusion at what they were seeing, they were all completely unaware of what they were about to witness. That they were about to watch the very first episode of a show that would not only change British television, but the science fiction genre itself. A show that would go on to immortalize itself in pop culture and become an icon. A show that would inspire generations of fans who would go on to continue its legacy into the modern day. They were completely unaware of the fact that they were watching the very first episode of Doctor Who, and how you, the viewer, are completely unaware of the fact that you are watching the very first episode of my new series on this channel, the Doctor Who Digest. In this series I'll be reviewing and analysing every episode of Doctor Who. Yes, you heard me right. Every single episode of the show, from its black and white beginnings to the modern day Who, and everything in between. We're going story by story, every missing episode, every recreation, every Christmas special, every monster, every companion, and every Doctor. I know that's a shit ton of work ahead of me and that probably will take me years to finish, but to be honest with you, I can't wait. I've been a fan of Doctor Who ever since I was a kid, and any excuse to talk about it is welcome. I can't wait to talk about the stories that made me a fan, the stories that I can very well live without, and the stories I have yet to see, which is pretty much most of classic Who. But before I get into all that, we need to start at the very beginning. I know I've got a long road ahead of me, but I'm ready. The question is, are you ready to become a wanderer in the fourth dimension? Now, firstly, a little bit of a history lesson. The creation of Doctor Who was not all that straightforward, so bear with me. So at the BBC in the early 60s, it was made known that there was a possibility of there being a potential new science fiction show for the network. Further research into the new show was compiled by staff writers Alex Frick, Donald Bull, and John Braybon. Among the many potential ideas for the show was the initial idea of having time travel be a part of it. Enter Sidney Newman, who was a Canadian, and also head of drama at the BBC. Newman was also a huge science fiction fan. Well, you see, he caught wind of there being an empty time slot in the programme. Newman felt this was a perfect opportunity to create a new sci-fi show for the BBC. He pulled up the existing research that had been made into the creation of the sci-fi show and got to work with Bull, Frick, Braybon, and another staff member, C.E. Weber. Over the course of many brainstorming sessions, ideas and concepts were thrown around, some that would later be added to the actual show, like that the time machine would be a ship that was bigger on the inside than the out, and the idea of a mysterious figure known only as Doctor Who was thrown in somewhere, though the actual person who came up with Who was up for debate. Eventually, the basic concepts of the show were realized. The show would be about an old man, the Doctor, who though appeared human was actually an alien from a distant world who had stolen a time machine called the TARDIS. Newman wanted the show to be educational for young viewers, where the Doctor would travel to historical locations and inform the viewer about their history. It was even originally intended for the TARDIS to change its appearance depending on what time period it arrived in, like a sarcophagus in Egypt or a fat guy in America. But when they realized that the show's budget was less than a Mars bar, they realized that they couldn't do that. So, they decided to make the TARDIS have a malfunction that prevented its chameleon circuit from working. Just one of the many signs of the TARDIS's unreliability. Once all the kinks were worked out on the final script, production was given the green light and was headed by producer Verity Lambert and story editor David Whittaker. A few actors were considered for the title role, but it was eventually given to actor William Hartnell. With all that said, it was time to write the first story. The very first story in Doctor Who was titled An Unearthly Child. It was written by Anthony Colburn and consisted of 4 parts which aired weekly from the 23rd of November to the 14th of December in 1963. The first part had to be rescheduled because its original airing came right after the news of the JFK assassination. So obviously a pretty bad time for the premiere of your new show. The first episode was later re-aired right before the airing of the second part so more people would see it. Now, with all that being said, I feel like I've stalled long enough. It's finally time to look at the very first story of Doctor Who. Let's begin. Part 1 begins with a policeman searching a junkyard. While doing so, he passes by a police telephone box, a perfectly ordinary sight for the time. As he walks by, the camera zooms in for us to hear an odd humming sound coming from the box. We then cut to Coal Hill School where 2 teachers there, Barbara Wright and Ian Chesterton, are talking about a student of theirs, Susan Foreman. They both agree on how unusual she is. When it comes to subjects like history or science, her knowledge exceeds even those of the teachers, but she's also very ignorant when it comes to normal everyday things that a girl her age should know. Things get even stranger as Barbara says that when she went to go to Susan's home address, 76 Totters Lane, she found nothing but an old junkyard.
Sorry, you went along there one evening?
Well, there isn't anything there. It's just an old junkyard.
Strangest of all, however, is Susan's grandfather, the mysterious Dr. Foreman, who Susan lived with. Neither of them have actually met him, however, and when Barbara offered to tutor Susan, she said she couldn't because her grandfather hated visitors. While pondering all this, the 2 find Susan in another classroom listening to some dutty beats. Barbara gives her a book on the French Revolution, and when they leave, she has this to say.
That's not right.
I can relate. That's how I am whenever I watch an anime and they just get everything wrong in the manga. I'm looking at you, Berserk 2016. We see Ian and Barbara waiting outside 76 Totters Lane, which we can see is the junkyard from the beginning. As they sit inside wondering what to do, Susan walks in. Curiosity gets the better of them and they decide to go in and see what's going on. When they enter, they see nothing unusual inside. While searching for Susan, who they can't find even though there's only one entrance, they find a police box. Just then an old man enters and we find out that this is Susan's grandfather, who simply calls himself the Doctor. When confronted by the 2 teachers, who believe him to be holding Susan captive in the police box, he dismisses all their claims. This part's pretty funny.
Young man, is it reasonable to suppose that anybody would be inside a cupboard like that?
Would it therefore be unreasonable to ask you to let us have a look inside?
I wonder why I've never seen that before. Now, isn't that strange?
The pair are just about to leave to get a policeman when the door to the box opens and they run inside, only to find...
Close the door, Susan.
It's bigger on the inside. The Doctor explains to the confused 2 that he and Susan are not of this world, that they are from an alien world that they had to leave behind for some reason, and that they have been travelling in this ship called the TARDIS that can travel through both time and space. Susan claims to be the one that named the TARDIS, a fact that has contradiction much later in the series.
The TARDIS can go anywhere.
TARDIS? I don't understand you, Susan.
Well, I made up the name TARDIS from the initials, time and relative dimension in space. I thought you'd both understand when you saw the different dimensions inside from those outside.
Susan wants to let the humans leave, but the Doctor won't allow it, saying that they will just go and tell all their secrets. He says that it's time to leave the 20th century behind. Susan, desperate to stay, struggles with the Doctor and causes the TARDIS to send him to a random location. As they leave the Earth, they enter the time vortex, which is just the intro. Finally, they arrive in a desert filled with rocks when a shadowy figure approaches the TARDIS. Part 2 is titled The Cave of Skulls, and we see what that figure was. A caveman. Hey, look at this. We then cut to a tribe of cave people where one of them is, "Whoa, mate, you doing that in front of a crowd?" Nah, I'm just kidding. He's actually trying to make fire. This is Zar, the leader of the cave people and son of the legendary firemaker who, as you could probably guess from the name, made fire. But Zar's old man seems to have forgotten to teach his son how to make it, so that's why he's rubbing shit together. Back on the TARDIS, the Doctor and his unwilling companions wake to find themselves no longer in the junkyard. Though Barbara has come around to the idea of time and space travel, Ian is still skeptical.
Ah, see for yourself.
It's not true. It can't be.
That's not on the screen.
Well, I've no more time to argue with you. I must go.
But... There must be some explanation.
While walking across this strange land, Susan says,
Should have changed. Wonder why it hasn't happened this time.
The ship, you mean?
Yes, it's been an Ionic column and a sedan chair.
Disguising itself wherever it goes.
Yes, that's right.
But it hasn't happened this time.
The Doctor decides to light one up when he gets attacked by the slack-jawed caveman. The others find his things and go to find out where he went. Where the Doctor went to is the cave where the tribe is. Cal, the caveman who was staring at the TARDIS, brings the Doctor back because he saw him create fire from his hands. You know, when he was smoking. The Doctor comes to, and realizing his situation, decides to make fire for the Neanderthals, but then realizes he didn't have any matches on him, so they kill him. Nah, I'm just kidding. He says he can make fire for them, but he'll have to go back to his ship. The cave people don't like this, so they are actually going to kill him when the others show up. But their rescue is cut short when they're quickly overpowered and sent to the Cave of Skulls. While tied up in the cave, they find out that it in fact is filled with skulls, which have a pretty grisly detail.
They're all the same. They've been split open.
Part 3, called The Forest of Fear, starts with the gang trying to free themselves from their bonds, with the Doctor being of no help. While that's going on, we see an old cave woman sneak away with Zar's knife. You see, this old lady has made it very clear that she is not a fan of fire. She believes it will bring the death of the tribe if they learn to make fire. She's all like kids nowadays with their fire and their heat. Back in my day, you just died of hypothermia, you know, back in the good old days. So she lets our heroes free so long as they promise to never come back and make fire. With that already being the gang's plan, they escape, when Zar and his girl wake up to find his knife missing. They enter the cave right when our heroes escape, and they kill the old lady. Nah, I'm just kidding again. They just throw around a bit and chase after the Doctor and co. As they run through what I can only assume is the Forest of Fear, Ian and the Doctor butt heads again. Barbara thinks she's in a horror movie, so she trips and falls on what I think is a dead animal, and screams, luring Zar towards them. They hear rumbling in the bushes and scary animal noises. Zar, being the alpha male he is, decides to fight the beast and gets royally fucked up. But he did kill the animal, so maybe he is an alpha male after all. Ian and the Doctor see this as a perfect opportunity to make a run for the TARDIS, but Susan and Barbara want to go help the wounded Zar. Ian reluctantly agrees while the Doctor just sits about and complains. Tries to make an attempt on Zar's life by the looks of it, which is kind of stupid. Like, you're just gonna crack this guy's skull open while everyone's looking? How are you gonna explain yourself? Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Here, hold this.
Anyway, we cut back to his cave where Carl sees the four have escaped and questions the old lady, who says she let them free, so Carl kills her. Nah, I'm just kidding again. He actually did kill her. Carl then pins the blame on Zar, proclaiming himself the new leader. The Doctor and the company finally make it back to the TARDIS when... Part 4, titled The Firemaker, opens with the four once again captured by the tribe. They all say Zar killed the old lady, but Zar's like no, and they say that he killed her with his knife, but the Doctor's all like...
This knife has no blood on it. I said this knife has no blood on it.
He really said, let me say it twice for the people in the back. He then tricks Carl into showing his bloody knife, and is like, you killed the old lady. And this idiot says... Yes! She said them. So the whole tribe goes against Carl and kicks him out. And you may be thinking that now that Carl is gone, that Zar would repay our heroes for saving his life by letting them go free. But no, this dickhead sends them back to the Cave of Skulls. Like, they saved your life when they absolutely didn't have to, and this is how you repay them? Ian starts cooking on the fire, hoping that this will finally make Zar set them free. When Zar comes in, he's bewitched by the fire, and Ian tells them from where he's from, everyone can make fire. Right then, Carl shows up like Batman and kills the guard and confronts Zar. We then get a good old caveman fight. Zar eventually becomes the winner. And with having both killed Zar and having fire, Zar is now the undisputed leader of the tribe. But he still doesn't let the four go, so while he and the other cavemen go hunting, the gang tries to think of an escape plan. Susan puts a skull on a fiery torch, which gives Ian an idea. They put 4 skulls on burning torches to make the tribe think that they've died. Crazy plan, I know, but it ends up working, with the cave people being so consumed with fear that they don't notice the four making a run for it. When they do realize, they chase after them through the forest until finally they make it back to the TARDIS. We see here the first time the TARDIS dematerializes as the tribe looks on in confusion. On the TARDIS, the Doctor says he cannot take Ian and Barbara back to their time because he doesn't really know how to work the ship. Just then they arrive on their new destination, a weird-looking jungle. They look at the radiation scale, which reads normal, but... And with that, we've concluded the first Doctor Who story. Now let's take a step back and really examine what we've just watched. My personal opinion of this story is that it's a bit of a mixed bag. On the one hand, Part 1 is a great introduction to the series. It really creates this mysterious mood and really slowly reels you in until we finally step into the TARDIS for the first time. It's real good, but the next 3 episodes are really lackluster for me. It's just them getting captured and running away and getting captured and running away. It's not very fun to watch. The idea of having the first episode of your time travel show take place in the Stone Age with cavemen makes sense, but they just can't really keep me interested. The cavemen themselves are mundane to me. I can't tell if I'm supposed to sympathize with them or prey on their downfall. They keep flipping back and forth too much that I can't really get a read on them. But I guess that's kind of the point. Anyway, overall for this story, I'd give it a 5 out of 10. Now for the analysis of the story, its characters and its themes. First, let's talk about the first part. We'll get introduced to a lot of things here, mainly the main 4 characters. Ian and Barbara are a great pair. They're both supposed to be the audience surrogates for us to be introduced to this new world. But they're both characters on their own, with them both being humble yet charming, with a strong moral fibre. Sure, the initial reason for them wanting to see Susan's home was from curiosity and not concern, but once they believed she was in trouble, they sprung into action, questioning the Doctor on what he'd done with her. Speaking of Susan, she's interesting. We see from how Ian and Barbara talk about her that she doesn't really fit in that school, or the 20th century at all. Her being an alien who travels through time might explain that, but despite all that, she still loves the modern day. It's obvious that she loves her grandfather, but she has grown to love other things aside from him. Multiple times throughout this story she defies the Doctor's orders, first to leave the 20th century, and when choosing to help Tsar. And finally, there's the Doctor. Now of course the Doctor is the most important character from the story. While the cavemen are just one-off villains and companions come and go, the Doctor is, aside from the TARDIS, the only thing that sticks into the present. So, it's kind of unusual to see him acting so undoctorly. He's a pretty big dickhead here, what with the way he constantly looks down on everyone, and him kidnapping Ian and Barbara, and let's not forget him trying to get Tsar to draw a map for him. He's very far removed from the Doctor we all know and love today. There are still some things that we recognise him for, like his quick thinking and his inability to use the TARDIS. And we also can't forget the TARDIS, the icon of the series. Sure, yes, the Doctor has always been around, but he keeps changing faces. The TARDIS has stayed the same for the past 60 years. Well, the outside at least. I have a lot of things to say about the TARDIS that I can't really fit here, but my biggest question right now is the TARDIS a time machine that can travel through space, or a spaceship that can travel through time? It's never really specified, so I guess it can be both. In this story it goes back in time, so I guess it's more of a time machine here. Speaking of going back in time, let's talk about the cavemen. The cavemen serve 2 purposes in this story. 1, to be the antagonists, and 2, to serve as an allegory for the progression of technology. You see, all the cavemen want is fire, for reasons such as heat, to cook food, and for light. Tsar specifically wants it because without it, his leadership is called into question. His father was leader because he could make fire, but he never taught his son how to. Talk about Father of the Year. Obviously, cavemen making fire is a well-established concept, like the invention of tools and the invention of the wheel. It makes sense that in a story about cavemen, they're gonna make fire. The things that not everybody wants fire. The old lady is firmly against the idea of fire and believes that it will bring the end of the tribe. She believes things were better in her day, where sure, you were cold and had to eat meat raw, but at least there was no struggle for power. Much like how today, older generations will look at today's youths and why they need all their gadgets and devices, very much forgetting the fact that their elders said the same things about them growing up. And even when we look all the way back to fucking 100,000 BC, elders will always believe that things were better back in their day. But there is merit to the idea of fire one day destroying us all. Maybe not in the way that she intended, but fire was the first huge step for humanity. It separated us from the animals who ate their meat raw and bloody, while we cooked our meat. Sure, we had weapons like knives, axes and hammers, but they were all made to replicate the weapons that animals naturally come equipped with. Fire was something that while other animals feared, we humans learned to control. And with that control came the invention of other things. We learned to heat water to create steam, which led to the creation of steam-powered machinery. The light that came from fire inspired the creation of the light bulb. In the world of combat, we learned to use fire to burn chemicals to create explosions. Explosions that one day got so big that they were able to burn down whole cities. Fire itself may not bring the end of us, but its scary descendants might. But this isn't a promo for Oppenheimer. This is the Doctor Who Digest, and I feel like we've digested all we can for one day. So join me next time as we look at the second story of Doctor Who, the Daleks. I wonder who they are. I guess we'll find out next time. But until then, I've been the Hooligan, and you've been great. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you all real soon. Bye.